And hello, everyone. We're excited to have you with us today for our ALA Solution Series webcast. Thank you to our program supporter, NetDocuments. Today's webcast is titled, Leveraging Matter-Based Content and Conversations to Drive Efficiency and Competitiveness. You know, as ALA members, our members rate firm profitability as a top priority for both their role and their firm. And like all businesses, email can have an overwhelming impact on your time and bottom line. Today, we're going to learn a little bit about how law firms are moving past inbox fatigue by leveraging matter-based conversations to improve efficiencies throughout their firms. But let's meet our speakers. Mike Sanders from Utah is a senior solution expert at NetDocuments. NetDocuments is the leading cloud-based document and email management provider for the legal industry. He has been heavily involved with cloud and SaaS solutions for nearly 20 years, and at NetDocuments has gained firsthand experience of implementing their solutions, a cloud platform, globally to law firms and companies of all sizes. He is now utilizing his knowledge to evangelize the benefits of moving to the NetDocuments platform. Dan Houck, who's from Atlanta, and is the Vice President of User Experience at NetDocuments, is an attorney and former co-founder and CEO of ThreadKM, which was acquired recently by NetDocuments. Dan is focused on enhancing collaboration and creating workflows that improve productivity and client service in the legal profession. Prior to working in technology, Dan practiced at Bryan Cave doing complex commercial litigation and antitrust counseling. Dan has spoken at numerous events about legal technology, including Ilticon, LawTech, LexThink, and several others. And everyone on the line today, please know that you can meet the NetDocuments team this May at the ALA Annual Conference and Expo in National Harbor. Their team will be in booth 200 along with the industry's leading solution providers in ALA's exhibit hall. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mike.
Great. Thank you, Sean, so much. We greatly appreciate the opportunity to be here. Wondering if I can get, there we go. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Excellent. So today we're here to talk about matter-based content and conversations that can drive efficiency and competitiveness among law firms, specifically with NetDocuments customers. But what I'd like to do is, I know there are some people on the phone that may have heard of NetDocuments, but may not know much about us at all. So I've got 2 slides, maybe 3, just to introduce us. So NetDocuments is a cloud-first document and email management service for the legal industry. And our mission, so what we strive to do, is to deliver the highest levels of security, reliability, usability, and customer delight, in that order, by the way, so that our customers can focus more on client success, internal efficiencies, etc., and less on systems. And our vision of what we are attempting to achieve is to be the trusted cloud platform in the global legal market for the management, sharing, understanding, and governance of content. And that incorporates quite a bit within the NetDocuments platform. So a little other tidbit about NetDocuments. Here's some numbers. Specifically, I don't want to go through all of them, but I do want to highlight 1 or 2. Number 1, we continue to see accelerated growth within the legal community, both in law firms as well as corporate legal departments and even other industries. So we've had 400 new customers in the past 12 months, which equates to 40% plus revenue growth for the 3rd year in a row. We do 4 platform updates per year that are non-disruptive. So the enhancements and the development projects we are working on are provided to our clients as part of our platform update. There's no downtime. You don't have to log out. You continue to have access to your content and to the service. And then finally, down at the very bottom, one of the most important features of NetDocuments is the security story behind it. And to date, we have had 0 security breaches, or for those who are a little more pessimistic, 0 security breaches that we know of. Now, this is an overall graph that represents NetDocuments and how we vision that we have positioned ourselves. You can see on the top right-hand side, we have certifications that apply to the platform, that apply to NetDocuments as a company. ISO 27 and 18, ISO 27001, SOC 2 Type 2, and a FIPS 140-2 Level 3. We've broken NetDocuments into several different pillars. So we've got our document management pillar, email management, collaboration, and governance, with dedicated product teams, dedicated development teams, to pushing forward the path of functionality to ensure that we meet the needs of the legal community, we meet the needs of our customers. Now, we're here to talk about matter-based content. So let's go ahead and take a look. We're done with the company overview, but what I'd like to do is introduce you, if you have not seen, our Matter Workspace, which essentially is a matter file. It's a place where all content related to that matter is organized, is aggregated, and displayed in a very nice, easy to consume format. You can see I have documents, I have emails, I have different containers for different purposes, and it makes it very simple to find what I'm looking for. Now, as it comes to efficiency and competitiveness, there are things that are done on a regular basis that we feel we've made significant performance improvements, process improvements as well. I just want to share one of those with you today. And once I'm done, then I'm going to turn this over to Dan Houck, who's then going to talk a little bit different topic here. But as I have a document, so I've got this particular document, which does happen to be in German, by the way, and I need to deliver this to my client. Multiple ways I can do it, but I want to highlight one, which is simply delivering a secured link. So if this document, say, is 50 megabytes in size, I can't deliver it via email. It's not going to get out of my Exchange server and definitely won't be received by my client. So instead of sending the document as an attachment, I can send a link to my client. Now, this is a secure link. As you can see, I've got options to put a password on it. I'm going to go ahead and do that. I also have an option to put an expiration date. You can see I click here. I've got a nice visual calendar. I can choose whether or not my client can download or simply view. I can lock a version just to set that as a record and say, Mr. Client or Mrs. Client, this is what I sent you 3 years ago. I can easily send it directly from here. I've got the option where I can copy the link, and maybe I do instant messaging with my client, so I can copy it, paste it in there, and send it. Or as an alternative, we can integrate with Microsoft Outlook and actually send it out to my client. And then as my client receives that email, all they have to do is click on the link. And as an example, this is what they would see by clicking on the link. It provides a web view of that particular document. And in this case, I've put a password on it. So the client enters the password, and there we go. So I'm not emailing content back and forth. The content stays within the secure NetDocuments environment. In this case, I've given them the ability to download the document, so they could download their own independent copy if they choose. So it's a quick, easy way to expose external content with my clients without having to go through a lot of different hoops or a lot of trouble or problems to make that happen. So that's just one thing that I wanted to talk about and to show within our Matter-centric environment. What I'd like to do now is turn the stage over to Dan Houck, who's going to talk about conversations and some other things that are right in his bailiwick of expertise.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Mike. And of course, thank you to everyone for coming here this morning. I'm really excited to have a chance to talk to you about what we're doing together, bringing ThreadKM and NetDocuments together. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the challenge that ThreadKM was solving, how we are now addressing it together with NetDocuments, and also a demo of what that product looked like and some insight as to what it's going to look like in the future. So with that, ThreadKM was acquired by NetDocuments in late November of last year, so it's a relatively new acquisition, and we are really excited about it because what we were doing at ThreadKM was building an integrated Matter-centric collaboration platform. And that allowed us to have those intelligent communications and work management And so, it was a great and exciting opportunity. We were really innovating, and my background was as an attorney. I was practicing as a lawyer. I was incredibly frustrated with the volume of email that I was dealing with on a regular basis, and knew that we could develop something that was more intuitive, that was contextual to the way that lawyers and legal professionals worked. And that really integrated with some of the key tools. And the big one was document management. This solution, by the way, really resonated with the market. In 2016, we won the ILTA Innovative Solution Provider of the Year. So that was a really a great win for us and validated how important this kind of technology is. I mentioned that the challenge that we were solving is around that overloaded inbox, and I think everybody is very familiar with this. The easiest way to describe it is just to look at your phone and see at the number and the red dot there. I know some of us are good about managing that, but we talk to attorneys all the time. I actually spoke to a managing partner a few weeks ago who had 18,000 unread messages in his inbox. And I think we all understand that that's not a really great way to manage the work. We've got this valuable client information. We've got conversations that are happening with opposing counsel. And of course, we've got all the insights that our teams are developing that we want to make sure are at our fingertips. And when they're kind of spread all across the inbox, well, now we've got a lot of challenges. Now, we have actually worked with another firm when we were at ThreadKM that did an internal study. They actually found that 81% of their emails were sent internally. What we have found is that most people are sending emails that are shorter. They're burst communications, and it's a lot more like messaging, and we're sending them to the people that we work with all the time over and over again. And so that volume adds up quickly, as we all know. If you think about it, if you have a chain with maybe 5 or 6 individuals on that chain, every time somebody adds a piece of information, you're putting that email in 5 or 6 different inboxes over and over and over again, so it's not surprising that this adds up quite quickly. The other thing that I think is really important, particularly in the context of the law firm to realize, is how much time we're spending managing that volume of information, right? There was a study done of knowledge workers by McKinsey. It found that 28% of each week was spent managing email. And when we think about that billable week and the amount of time that lawyers are trying to bill in a week, and how much of that time that they're in the office that they simply can't bill because they're doing administrative tasks, this is a big part of that. And, if we can reduce that, suddenly we're freeing up time for the lawyers either to bill to other matters or simply to get some of their own time back, which I know that they would appreciate, and I certainly would. And so that's what we developed at ThreadKM, was a solution that was integrated, matter-centric, and allowed us to communicate in, I think, the way most of us want to, and we've started doing in all the other parts of our lives. And that's a messaging style of communication. And we called them threads. These threads were matter-centric, so they are tied to existing matters inside of your firm that people can join and begin having these conversations, and they can exchange links and files and all of those type of things. The second thing that we built was an annotation engine that allowed us to take documents that existed inside of that document and add some conversation on top of that, so that you weren't editing the document, but you were providing a place for people to have conversations. And we'll talk about this a little bit more in the demonstration as well. The last thing that we did at ThreadKM was develop tasks. And this was a way to visualize all of the work that was associated with a particular matter. And this made it very easy for the team, for the partner, to come in and see, where are we with this? How are things progressing? And as new things come in, make it very easy to add and track that information. And so we put all of those things together, and we called it ThreadKM. Now, ThreadKM was both an on-prem or cloud-based version, but it was very, required a lot of management, as I think a lot of folks know who do kind of server-side management and things like that. You know, that's a lot of work. And so what's really exciting about moving to NetDocuments is that we are now bringing all of this technology into their secure cloud platform. And what that enables us to do is not only leverage all of the capabilities, you know, the security, the storage, you know, all of those type of things, but it also provides a great user experience for NetDocuments customers. And so that is a huge change, and we are currently moving, you know, these technologies over into the NetDocuments platform. And we're starting with the threads and the files and annotations. So we are building a messaging product that allows people to have those conversations that we looked at earlier, and also access those files, start marking them up with their comments, with their feedback in a very easy to do way. And that's a product we will be releasing at the end of this quarter. And I think that's a really important point to make here, is how quickly we were able to innovate and build inside of the NetDocuments platform, because it is cloud first and because it is such an extensible, usable platform to develop on. That's how quickly we're able to turn around and come to market after an acquisition just a couple of months ago. And so I want to point out something that I think is really exciting about what has changed on the back end of ThreadKM as we now move it into NetDocuments. And I think this is really exciting. I hope that you do too. When we were at ThreadKM, these conversations were like every other chat product that exists. It was stored in a database. And that database could exist anywhere. It would have to be kind of independently managed and so forth. With our new offering, we are storing those threads as documents. So instead of having the database that has to be administered, these documents are stored inside of the workspace that the thread is associated with. Now, the thread looks exactly the same as you'll see here. It will look like a text message, but in the background, it's treated as a document object. And we're going to talk about why that's really important here in a minute. And that document is then stored inside of NetDocuments. And the benefit of this approach is that when we take this, this approach of storing the threads as documents, that means that those documents and those threads get the benefit of all of the security and information infrastructure of what we're doing here. And so that makes it very easy to share this information. And so you get all of that object store, you get the dual custody key encryption, you get the geo-awareness, the unified search. So if you're using ND Flex Store, for example, and your documents are being stored in a specific location, that's going to allow you to save that document into that specific country or location. Likewise, with the unified search, you can now, you're not bouncing between different search applications. You've got it all stored right there in your NetDocument search. And the entity extraction, really exciting stuff. That means that we're going to be reviewing and storing all of that information that is generated and inside of those threads. The entities are going to be extracted. Really cool stuff. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and jump into our demonstration of the ThreadKM product. And as I switch here, I want to point out something that's important. I want to point out that this is the old ND Thread product, or excuse me, the ThreadKM product. This is essentially not exactly what we're going to be seeing, but it's going to be a little bit similar, and there will be some differences, and I'll try and point those out. So I'm going to switch here into the ThreadKM product. You can see this is a desktop application. So this is essentially an application that can live in your system tray, just like this. It's also available on the web so that you can access it through a browser as well. Whatever your preferred experience is, we have that. Likewise, it's going to be available in the App Store, on your mobile device, on your iPhone and Android. That's going to be available when we launch, so you're going to have that right away. And we think that's a very important piece because, as we all know, attorneys are on the move, they're having conversations, they're talking, and so forth. So that is what we are doing here as we move the product into the NetDocuments Cloud. I'm starting off here in the People tab, and you can see I've got an area called Unread. So this is unread people messages. And this is, we thought this was important because I think it's a great place to start because this is where a lot of people think about messaging, and it's that one-on-one conversation. It's direct questions about, hey, do you want to grab coffee? How are you doing today? Those type of things. And that's a very important part. And so we built that into NetDocuments and into ThreadKM. Now, but what's really special about this product is the Workspaces. I'm going to go ahead and click on the Workspaces view here because this is where we have that matter-centric content. This matter, this Acme Corp general file, this is a matter that exists in our firm, it exists in the document management system, and now it exists as a place for us to have conversations securely inside of ThreadKM right here. I can see all of my colleagues who are here, so I can see myself and Carl are online. I can see some other matters that I've joined over here. I've got my favorites, which I've marked up here on top. I've got an unread area, and then I've got some other workspaces. Now, if someone were to post some information in one of the other workspaces, let's say Carl wants to reach out to me and with something in a different workspace, he can go ahead and ping me, and you can see here that this message appears, right, just the same as an email might pop up or other message might pop up, and it appears right here. And this is now in the unread area. I've got a badge indicating the at mention. So this is a standard type of notification, and this means with the badge that I've been at mentioned specifically. So that's going to be a higher priority for me to check out. By the way, if I miss that notification here on the desktop, that's okay, because it's going to push to my mobile device, and it's going to allow me to click on the notification on the mobile device, and again, I'll be dropped right in. And I can even configure it so that if I missed it on my mobile device, I can get an email into my inbox with a link that will take me into this conversation. So we know we're going to see everything that gets posted here, and I can actually control how those notifications work, not just globally, but in every single workspace. I can create a unique set of notification preferences. Now, what are we looking at here? This is essentially, this is the team thread. It's our default thread that we create in every workspace. And as I scroll up here, what it's showing me is the complete history, all of the conversations, all of the decisions, the questions and answers that we've generated. And if you think about this in email form, this would be dozens of emails or more that would be sitting in everybody's individual inbox. Now we have one place to have one conversation and make it really easy for everybody to join. If you think about that associate who maybe comes into the matter later, and this matter's been going on for months or maybe even years, how do you catch that person up to all of the information that's gone on? Who are the key players? How did this, what are the key documents? Those type of things. Well, now you simply need to direct them into the platform. They can join Matter, and they can then start catching up on all of the different work. And speaking of those workspaces, you can see that I've joined a number of different workspaces. But if there's a workspace that I need to join, all I need to do is click on the Join Workspace button, and it's going to provide me with a list of suggested workspaces. Now, it's looking at the workspaces myself and other people have joined together, and then identifying ones that I haven't joined yet and making some guesses about maybe ones I should join. And of course, we're applying all of the security and the ethical walls to make sure that I'm only I'm only going to see and be able to join workspaces that I have access to inside the firm. If I don't see it on my list, I could just type in the matter name, the matter number, any of that information in order to find a workspace inside of ThreadKM here. And you can see that essentially it will pull up that matching list, and I could join any of those workspaces. And again, it's checking on the permissions at the same time, so I won't even be able to see a workspace that I'm not able to join. So as I scroll down to the bottom here, you can see that I've got a lot of conversation, and in the latest piece of discussion here, Carl's actually asked that, he says, I think they just want another summary judgment case in Arkansas. Does anyone happen to have a copy of that case? Well, I happen to have a copy of that case. So I want to go ahead and share it with everybody here. So I'm going to take this document, Acme Summary Judgment, and drag it in. All I need to do is drag and drop. And I have the opportunity to change the name, and then I can choose to post it to the team thread, which I'm doing here. I could add additional threads if I wanted to. And then I just select the folder. This is showing, and Mike took a look earlier at the workspace and all of the filters and folders and so forth that are associated with this particular workspace. And I can choose from that same set of workspaces right here. So I can click on secondary issues, for example, and then add a comment to it as well. So I'm actually going to go ahead and click on Save. And what I've done here is, I think, really exciting. Number one, I've shared it with the whole team. And by the way, if I want to draw Carl's attention to it specifically, I'm going to go ahead and mention him. Say, @Carl, please see above. Now, everybody else in this thread is going to get that notification because of the fact that it's going to get a notification because of the fact that I've added some content here. So it will appear in the unread area. But for Carl, he's going to get that directed notification that we saw earlier with the appearance of a pop-up, and it will push to his mobile device and so forth. Again, because I've mentioned him directly. Now, the other exciting thing that we've done here is we have put this document into the document management system. We've stored it in exactly the right location. So if you think about how many times we're trying to get people to store the documents into the document management system, we want them to share it. Now they have a really great way of doing it as well, because they're incentivized. As they share it, they're storing it. And so any user now can come into this workspace, they can click on this document, and it's going to be pulled directly from that document. You can see in just that short amount of time, it had already been added and profiled into NetDocuments. And users then can go in and start marking it up. So for example, if I wanted to leave a comment over here on the left-hand side, I could do that. I could say, here is the document. And that's great. It can be what we call a global comment that provides some specific information about a particular document. But then as I'm scrolling through, I might find something that's kind of interesting, right? I might find something that I want to talk about. And the way that I do that is I simply highlight that portion of the document. And then I can click on this comment button, and I can say something like, let's review this case law, and post it. So I'm leaving a contextual comment directly on the document, and I can do this with any type of a document. If you think about PowerPoint, Word, and the example here, PDF, where many times I've got a lengthy summary judgment document, such as here, a lot of things to cover, a lot of things to talk about. How do I do that? I can't mark it up in Word. It's very difficult to do and very difficult to share inside of a PDF viewer. Now I've got a place where myself and my team can actually go through and start having conversations about the document, and we can direct our attention to specific areas. Other people could jump in and leave a reply as well. So it makes it really easy to go ahead and start reviewing documents, sharing, and talking about them. And by the way, if I needed to edit, if this was a Word document and I wanted to edit it, I wanted to check it out of NetDocuments, the button's right here. It's going to direct me exactly over there, and I can start checking it out. So super, super simple. Not only a way to access all the documents that already exist in NetDocuments, but now adding new ones as well. Now, we've been in the team thread. I'll point out briefly that we have other threads that we can generate inside the context of the workspace. So we can add a tax issues thread, a settlement discussions thread. And I'll point out, you might notice the lock on there. So that's actually a private thread that we've created here inside of Acme General File. Now, I can see that it exists because I have access to it. But people who don't have access to it, they won't even know that this settlement discussion piece exists. And so this is a great way. You can see there's only 3 people in this particular workspace. And it's very easy for people to create these threads. They can start having conversations and forking off discussions according to different subject matter areas. And remember, now with NetDocuments, each of these threads is stored and treated as a document. So all of the security policies that you have in place, all of the different ways that you manage information, that's going to be applied to this content as well. This whole thread is a document inside of NetDocuments. That's just so cool. And of course, what we can do here inside of a thread is so much more powerful. You've already seen the ability to post documents. We can post links. As well, we can mention each other, and then we can also start to incorporate some really neat stuff like having the information being scanned by the computer and suggesting relevant information. So, you know, when I'm posting something like what about SEC compliance, I can actually post it here, and not only am I going to solicit information from my colleagues, but you can see we've programmed Threadbot to be able to suggest this particular document in this area. So then as I'm talking about things, we can actually bring automated information into the context of the conversation. If you're in knowledge management, if you're looking for ways to expose some of your best practice documents to users, this is a fantastic way to do that. And so as we start to build these conversations, we have really powerful ways to not only share information with each other, but also to expose information that's been hidden in other places inside of your firm. Now, I'm going to go ahead and switch into the files view here. This is really easy to explain because what you're seeing is the same thing that you would see if you were logged into the NetDocuments platform that Mike mentioned earlier. I have exactly the same set of access. So again, if anything were to change, I could change, it would be reflected here immediately. And I think that's a key benefit. You think about the number of different systems you have and the concerns about making sure that you have the same security set across all of them. The more systems you introduce, the more difficult that becomes, the more difficult it becomes to export data out in a consistent way. Make sure you're capturing everything, so when the client file needs to be put together, how do you do that? Well, with our unique conversation platform, we make that really easy, and so it's totally seamless. So here's that document that we uploaded earlier. Again, every time I click, we're checking the permissions, and we're making sure that each user has the correct access before we expose any document to them. Now, all of this, of course, is wrapped up in our search. So if I'm in the team thread and I can click on the search button here and I can search for employees, for example, and it's going to deliver to me a complete list of all of the instances where that word or similar variations are in a particular thread, in this case, the team thread. But I can, of course, expand that search to say, I want to look inside of the whole workspace. So I want to look at all the different threads and maybe the files too. And I can even search all of ThreadKM to look at all of those different possibilities. So as I go ahead and click on one of these search results, it's going to drop me directly into the thread and point exactly where it is. So again, the more content that we are putting inside of this platform, the more powerful it becomes, the more of a resource it becomes. It's not individual email silos, it's the collective intelligence of the firm, and that's really powerful. Now, the last thing I'll point out, I mentioned earlier, is the tasks. So because you see it there, I want to make sure that folks kind of understand what it is. This was part of the ThreadKM platform. In our initial release in Q1, we are not going to have tasks as part of it, but it is something that we know you're excited about, and we know that there's a huge amount of interest in. So you will be seeing tasks as part of a NetDocuments offering, and so we're really excited about. Just wanted to give you a flavor of that here. Each one of these cards represents a task where I can add a description, client instructions, a due date, estimated amount of time, and I can post updates about this to particular threads and so forth. And then I can move these cards around on the board. So I can move this research tax issues over here to illustrate the fact that this is now something that's being worked on. I can move them up and down on the board as well to illustrate the priority of these different tasks. And essentially, this then becomes a great meeting place to have conversations about where are we, how are things going, let's reprioritize. As new tasks come in, it's very simple to just add it right here and keep track of this information. So when the client calls, they say, where are we? Now we know exactly where it is. It's very customizable, a lot of exciting things that we are anticipating doing with tasks. So I did want to share that with you because it is part of that original ThreadKM platform. And as I mentioned, it's all wrapped in search and all of the administrative things. So if you notice there's this administrative panel here, well, that's going away because the administration, the user management, the document management, all of that's now being handled by NetDocuments. There's no more setting up servers or anything like that. It's so much easier to get started with our conversation platform here. So we're really excited to be able to release this again at the end of Q1. And with that, I would pause here. I know that there might be some questions out there, so I'm going to flip back to our presentation here and find out from you if you have any kind of questions. And Mike, is there anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions that are coming in, and one just real quickly because you were just on the features. One that came in was word search, and I know that you had checked through the feature where if you type in a word search in the content thread, could you just show that once more, just very quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me switch back over here. So if I were to, do a search, like for instance, I was in the team thread before, I think, and so if I do a search for employees, that is going to give me that full list of matching words here that is in this particular thread. And so we can search in the one thread that you're in, we can search in all of the threads in that workspace, or we can search everything. And all I need to do then is click on this message, and it's going to drop me wherever it is. This could be from 6 months ago or 2 years ago, and it will find it and drop me directly there. That's a great question.
Thank you. One of the things you guys covered was 81% of email is internal and not billable. It's pretty telling. And I wonder how have firms and administrators you guys have worked with started the dialogue with their partners or teams to consider a change to perhaps a matter-based approach for their email?
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting things that we've seen in the last really 6 to 8 months is a tremendous uptake in kind of different solutions that users are just adopting themselves, right? So we see a lot of people in the U.S. using iMessage to communicate with colleagues, to communicate with their clients and things like that. In Europe, actually, WhatsApp seems to be more popular. But of course, the problem with all of those is you're not capturing it, and if you're not capturing it, you're introducing a lot of risk. Because you don't know the information that your attorneys are now giving out to the world. You're not capturing it in the way that you used to be able to do with email. And so what firms are really interested in is providing a solution that gives them that easy messaging solution, but that now they have control over and that fits inside of their secure document management system. And so it's really been a lot of just introducing individuals to the fact that there is now a solution that exists, that we're providing it, and that they're going to get the benefits of what they've been doing elsewhere with other tools.
And in addition to that, Dan, so you've got the whole issue of consistency of the same experience. So, oh, I was talking with this lawyer last week. Did I text him? Did I use Slack? Did I use instant message? Did I use email? If that internal communication goes through the threads that are within that documents, not only do you have the record, not only do you capture the information, but I can go to one place, especially if it's related to that matter, which further solidifies the significance of that matter-centric approach for documents, for emails, and now for even real-time conversation threads.
Thanks, Mike. I think you guys coined a term there, leveraging firm intelligence earlier, just sort of being able to have a big picture look on what everyone's trying to communicate about. And I think what you're sharing segues into our next question. And could you talk a little bit more about how the matter-based approach coexists, or maybe doesn't, with Outlook or existing, call it classic email programs that folks are using?
Exactly, and I'll take
Sure.
that question, at least from a NetDocument standpoint, and then Dan, maybe you can comment with ThreadKM. But we continue to see people are very familiar, and I'll focus on Microsoft Outlook, but it really expands to email in general, that email client that they use. But essentially, people like to work within email, to send, receive, to access documents, etc. And one of the nice things about NetDocuments is the flexibility of how you interact with the system. So you've got people that prefer the Outlook look and feel. So there's an interface within Outlook that allows you to file emails, to grab content, to potentially even see the matter view of content saved in the system. You've got a browser view where you can access it, similar to what I showed earlier. You've got interfaces within Microsoft Office or within a mobile device, or even, for those who would prefer to use folders on your local machine, you can access content via that mechanism as well. So not only can you view it and access it through Outlook, but it's through your preferred method of about 6 or 7 options. And all of that refers back to the same content stored within NetDocuments, so it's not multiple copies everywhere based on how I access it, but it's all one single copy regardless of how I access it.
Okay, very good. Take us back just sort of to that, I can't get over the 81% of emails internal stat you guys have. Talk to us a little bit about how administrators can help their teams evaluate the impact of internal email. Like, where would they start?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And really what we tend to see is, and most people are pretty familiar with it, is that you kind of have one email that just starts to change, right? And what happens is you have different people kind of jumping in at different times, responding to different issues, and that change just builds and builds and builds. And so it's really not surprising that the volume is that high and that the percentage of that is that high, because, essentially, what you end up doing is just using that email as a chat tool, really. And what happens then is that information needs to be handled by each individual user. You think about all that information now that you're kind of adding up, and you're really, I think one of the biggest challenges is, think about what those messages end up looking like, where you've got a subject that 20 messages in really doesn't have anything to do with what the initial subject was about. And so going back in your search and trying to find it by looking at email headings and things like that, that's not necessarily as useful. But if you put the conversation in the correct location, if you say, this is a conversation that's about this matter, and then you go from there, suddenly you have context for it every time that you enter, and people can see who's typing, for instance. You can see who's working on a response, so that it's not everybody jumping in at the same time, hitting that reply button and creating that email avalanche.
Very good. Habits, I think a lot of it's habits. I mean, we look at my own personal experiences with CRM, and we sort of say if it's not in the CRM, it didn't happen. Habits are hard to break. Tell us a little bit about the adoption time. I like the phrase that one of our participants shared was like the adoption time from that classic email approach to something more matter-based. What does that familiarity look like, and what's the timeline?
Sure. So we work with practice groups, often whom are identified by the firm, because they've, and usually the ones who we start with are ones who have already transitioned into other tools. One of my favorite stories is where I talked to the CIO at a firm. The CIO said, we just use email, nobody's using anything else. And then I talked to an associate that I knew at the firm, and he said, no, actually, when you join our practice group, you have to get on GChat, because that's how we handle all of our matter communication. And I think that's the reality. And so if you start with groups like that who already kind of have that predisposition, or as I mentioned earlier, the partners who are texting. I had a partner who said, I tell people, don't email me if you want a response. Send me a text message. Those are the people who are definitely ready today. And then as more people come into the system, it has that viral effect of saying, well, I don't want to send you an email anymore. I just want to send you a message. You need to get on the platform. And that's very powerful. And so it's not surprising that a collaboration tool like this has that kind of viral impact as it starts to grow in the firm, and the value proposition becomes more and more clear over the course of time.
Thank you. Everyone, I just want to remind you that you will receive a follow-up to today's webcast with an archive, a video, and also the slide deck. So if there's folks internally that you'd like to share this with, it's a wonderful tool to be able to do that. And if we have any remaining questions, please go ahead and use chat to all panelists in your chat boxes. Dan, Mike, one thing that came up is, with the acquisition of ThreadCam, when will that be completely integrated into the NetDocuments product suite?
Sure. So we are starting with the standalone messaging platform, which is going to be available in desktop and iOS and Android at launch. And then we are going to be exposing different pieces of the ThreadCam technology into the main platform over the next year or so, year and a half, I think is what we're anticipating. A lot of that is being driven by the customer interest that we're getting in certain areas, and so we're very excited about how these different elements are going to kind of continue to come together. into a really holistic experience. I think what we have today, what we're building today is incredibly powerful, and I think our customers will see over the course of the next 12 months how powerfully these two companies can come together and create a collaboration experience that just frankly doesn't exist in the market today.
Excellent, thanks. I think also just a reminder that everyone, you can meet the NetDocuments team in National Harbor at the ALA annual conference, but if you'd like to also get in touch with the team, there is a contact detail here right on this slide. You could talk to an expert or perhaps even follow up with Mike directly. We have everyone's info you'll receive tomorrow in the follow-up of this presentation. I don't have any other questions here, and I just wanted to take a moment. Dan, Mike, was there any closing comments you wanted to share with the audience?
Thank you for coming, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan and Sean and Regina, thank you so much for the opportunity. If you can't tell from our voices, then we're not doing something right. But we're really excited. We think it's a focal point to bring ThreadKM, which is unique with its own advantages tailored to the legal industry, and integrating that with NetDocuments, which is the leading cloud platform for document management, email management, and now real-time conversation management as well, all within the cloud. And it's going to provide some very nice features even after the integration between the two systems is complete. So Dan is a man with many, many ideas, and as now Vice President of User Experience, you're going to see his fingers across the entire system to really continue to reach the end user and to make it even that much more valuable.
Thank you, Mike, and thank you to everyone at NetDocuments for helping us learn a little bit more about the evolution of email and communication internally at our firms and our businesses through what you guys have termed as matter-based content and conversations. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.